or hand sculpt, you have to first of all try to retain the hardness of the hand's planes. So basically, what I do is I divide once or twice without the smoothing algorithm, as you just saw on the screen there, and then I turn the smoothing back on and divide it another time. Now this hand here is the basic hand that comes in with the insert multi-body part brush, and it's a really good base for us to work with. It's really clean poly count and geometry. So let's just jump right in and start sculpting. First things first, the reason we did the whole smoothing and then dividing without the smooth is because we want the knuckles to be sort of preserved, as well as the edges of each of your fingers. Now, this is very important because the silhouette of the hand is what matters the most. So whenever building hands, you want to grab the clay buildup brush, and with a low intensity like 10, 8, 11, something like that, you want to start adding your knuckles to your fingers. And you don't want to worry about anything else. You just really want to start blocking in these basic shapes. So what I try to do when I'm doing the hands is just exaggerate those knuckles, and then I'll sort of smooth them back in. What I noticed right off the bat is that this thumb is really rotated poorly, so I'm going to bring it a little bit back so it becomes a little bit more realistic in its rotation. So I'm going to give it a little bit more of a straighter line here so that it looks a little bit better. Once I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and smooth the edges that I've transposed because they can get a little bit messy in there. And I'm also just going to sort of adjust the shape of the thumb here. So I'm going to push inside a little bit of the finger on the sides, as you saw right there. And then I'm going to pull out the tips off the front. And that'll give it a nice, good shape that I can smooth out later on. After that, I'm going to cut in the tendons, and if you remember the forearm lessons, these are the digitorum tendons, and the one that goes to your pinky is the minimi tendon. So after I've blocked in the knuckles and the tendons, I like to go ahead and sort of adjust the proportions of my fingers and at least double check so that I can start adding the knuckles once again. And you want to divide the finger in half for the first knuckle and then in thirds for the next knuckle. Now these are a bit close together and I'm going to adjust them later on, but your hand is an arc, and so if you look at your hand, you'll see that the knuckles of the index finger goes to your middle finger is a little bit higher, then your ring finger a little bit lower, and then your pinky even lower. So you sort of want to keep that ratio going to maintain proportionality in the sculpt. As you can see, the pinky gets pushed quite backwards. And here you'll see me sort of pulling everything back and just adjusting the proportions because to me they weren't necessarily matching up quite well. I had no room for the fingernails, and that was bothering me. After I've done that, it's time to block in the single knuckle for the thumb. It only has the one, so it's something to add. And once we've done that, we're just going to take a quick look around the model. And I'm going to add a little bit of the pad underneath the hand. We'll talk about this in a little bit more detail later, but you do have these two pads here, and these are muscles, so, you know, it is important to talk about them, but we'll mention them a little bit later. Once you get those two shapes in, what I like to do is add a little bit of the tendons that go underneath the hand. In this case, they would be the flexors. And you can see this nice little ridge. I'm sure you've seen it before in your own hand or other people's hands. You just have this nice little ridge here of the tendons popping out. It's really easy to see if you flex your fingers and sort of move your wrist down. If you're knocking on a door, you can really see those tendons popping out. And then I'm adding the styloid process, which is the little bit of the ulna there on the corner. Pretty sure it's called the styloid process. I may be confusing, but I think that's it. I'm just going to refine a little bit of the knuckles right now, and I'm going to start pulling them upwards towards the hand. And the knuckles, they sort of look like little deltoids. If you remember the shoulder lesson, you remember that there are 3 heads. You can sort of do that and not have a problem. You get a really interesting and very good looking shape right off the bat. I'm just sort of smoothing out the corners here, because dividing without the smoothing algorithm, generally speaking, will sort of get you in a little bit of trouble. And now the most important part of our little process here. We're going to single out each finger, we're going to go to polygroups, and then hit group visible. Doing this by holding the Control Shift, I selected the lasso tool, and now I'm just making sure that I'm not getting more than I need to get for this hand. So once this is done, and I have all the appropriate faces selected, I'm going to go ahead and inverse my selection, and then do a group visible. I'll repeat this for all the other fingers. And then finalizing it by grabbing the thumb. It's important to get the upper area of the thumb as well, so you have the full finger. And if you have a bad color like I did there, very green, it's close to green, 2 very similar colors separating polygroups, just make sure to hit the group visible until you get a different color. So I'm going to do the same thing for the hand until I get a sort of orange color, and this I am satisfied with. So after we've done that, we'll be ready to sculpt, and we'll be able to use topological masking to ease our way into it. So I'm just grabbing the standard brush here and adding a little bit more detail to the tendons, but this is more or less where we wrap up. I'm just going to do a few more minor adjustments. And in this case, just push the knuckles back a little bit. So this is something we're going